It's Israel Hour Radio with Josh Rohn, and most of the time when I bring you an interview on the air, it's with somebody very much involved in the Israeli music scene, somebody, an artist you may know and love. Well, today we're going to do something a little different. It was a few months ago that I first became aware of a YouTuber named Brian Velez, and he apparently, hi Brian, good to have you. Let me finish my intro and then we'll say hello. He he apparently is very much into reviewing music from cultures and countries all around the world. It's such an interesting idea. And a few months ago, he started reviewing Israeli music videos, and now he's made 4 or 5 or 6 of these Israeli videos. And I said, you know what? I got to talk to this guy and find out what he thinks about Israeli music. So, Brian, welcome to Israel Hour Radio. It's so great to talk to you.
Thank you so much for having me, Josh. I really appreciate you reaching out.
You know, like people sometimes tell me that after they've listened to me for many years and they finally get to meet me, it's like a whole different experience. Well, seeing you on YouTube and feeling like I got to know you and your personality a little bit on YouTube, it's really nice to speak to you in person. So thanks for joining us. You have as of this morning 201,000 subscribers on YouTube, 391 videos, and your Israeli music videos have 680,000 plus views and counting. It's pretty amazing. You've reviewed artists like Shlomo Artzi, Ofra Chaza, Yishai Ribo, Ayal Golan, Awe, Subliminal, Netta Barzilai, Omer Adam. And you told me your personal favorite is Idan Reichel, which we'll get into in a minute. And by the way, I looked at your YouTube channel, and you've done a lot of different things. You've tried some different things. You've tried playing guitar. You've tried teaching guitar. But this really seems to have stuck. So I want to know, how did you get into this idea of reviewing music from different cultures?
Oh, man. So let me see if I could compress this in the shortest form possible, because I've been on YouTube since 2009, November of 2009, actually. It started off, actually, the channel with my band, that I had back in middle school. And eventually they kind of just gave me the rights to just keep the channel, and I started making tutorials and learning about music and just really experimenting as a musician, because I grew up playing several instruments, actually. And as I started getting older, whatever, I moved out of my house, this and that, got married. My wife one day went to work. I sat down. My wife is actually from Latvia, a small country up in what is it? Up north in Europe, northeastern Europe. And I uncovered was Estonia, and from there the series just kind of took off. And I was trying to learn Estonian, which actually, ironically enough, ended up being a parody. So it was like a bittersweet first video, and it's actually what kicked off this whole thing of uncovering different cultures all around the globe.
So when did you realize you were onto something? When did you realize, you know what, I can review different cultures and different countries, and people really care about this?
Actually, the moment I started having people reach out and befriending me and stuff like that, like it felt really nice actually being able to connect with others, because I've always had an interest in traveling, but never really had the chance to like go head first into it.
Have you visited a lot of these countries that you've talked about?
I've tried my best to, like, mind you, the whole series is fairly new, relatively new, about 2 years into it. So I visited a few countries since then. I've been to the UK, I've been to France, Spain, Latvia, Estonia, Lithuania, Turkey. Let me see, trying to think, a few more. Like, but off the top of my head, these are some of the countries that I have visited so far.
That's phenomenal. So let me ask you, now that you have a little bit of a foundation in these cultures, when you do go visit them, do you have a whole different perspective?
100%. Like I'm actually obsessed with like the culture that is oftentimes only found in Europe, or at least just for now. Like, mind you, the United States, it's a relatively brand new country. Only like it was established, mind you, in like 1776, if I'm not mistaken.
Right.
And so, mind you, when it comes to Europe, you have so much more. You have so many different cultures. Like, you could drive 2 hours north, 2 hours east, and you're going to end up in a new country with a whole brand new language and different food that I absolutely just love. I feel more comfortable when I'm not understanding what's going on around me. I don't know why.
Well, that's fantastic. So let me ask you this: you've decided you're going to start do a video on a new language, a new culture. How do you get started? What's the process that you take to find what you need to find in order to make this happen?
Honestly, it was just kind of a swing at it. Like, it was actually Estonia that then turned me to their friends over in Finland because they're like cousins, distant cousins. And then Finland introduced me to Hungary, and then it just kind of like everyone was like, "Hey, here's a golden ticket. Go, like, you know, go and cover some of their stuff." And I was like, "Sure, why not?" And it just kept spiraling and spiraling, and eventually I was like, "You know what? Let's make it a thing." And then I started covering different types.
But how do you choose the songs? I mean, if you don't know where do you start when you don't know where to start?
Oh, great question. So the way that usually works out, I like to look for iconic musicians, and so I tend to just mix it in. I like to mix it in because I want to bring people together. Like that's the whole purpose behind like the whole series. So I will usually type in, like, for example, famous musicians from, for example, in this case, Israel, and then from there it will start linking me some of the famous ones. I'll click on them, and then I'll start looking like for suggestions, and then who they've worked with in recent, like within the recent time period, and then that's usually how I start finding them. That's how I kick it off. And then normally after the first episode, if it does well, I get usually suggestions, which is what makes the next episode.
Wow, I think that's great. So much fun. Are you really watching these videos for the very first time when you film?
Believe it or not, I am. So what happens is that I usually play the intro just to know what type of genre it is. So I'll usually play the first 15 seconds of it to understand what genre it is, and then I'll go right ahead and I'll go onto YouTube, youtube.com, like at the very top of the URL. Right after YouTube, I type in the letters PP, and it goes right ahead and downloads it right to my computer, and like that, I just keep it there. And usually it'll sit on an external hard drive, usually for a few days, if not weeks. And then by that time, I'm blanked, and so it makes it even more interesting to open it.
So you've forgotten it all until you go back to it. That's great.
Most
Uh,
part.
so you say you like to you get a kick out of following things when you don't quite understand what they mean. Is language a barrier in appreciating music? Can you really get into the music of a culture that you know nothing about?
Well, it depends. When it comes to rap, I actually like to pull up the lyrics. I've started to integrate that recently, where I start like, because mind you, rappers' best tool is his words. So these are the only times I make that exception where I actually pull up the lyrics at this point. But I do think that you could appreciate music without understanding the language.
And has there been a culture that you've really, and you don't have to say Israel, has there been a culture that you've really said, you know, if I wasn't doing this kind of thing, if I wasn't doing these videos, I would still listen to this country's music?
Yeah, oh yeah, definitely. There's been a couple actually. So Germany really struck a chord with me. Finland really struck a chord. I grew up being a metalhead, and Finland and Sweden and like all these Scandinavian countries like really just dove into the whole metal scene, and I was like, yes. So those would probably be it.
Very good. Now, you seem to be generally complimentary towards the music that you play, at least from what I've seen. I haven't seen everything you've done, but do you ever pull up a song and say, I hate that? That's terrible.
I do. I do. I try my best not to be as harsh when it comes to the rating. So I think the lowest score I've ever given a song has been about a 4. Because mind you, once again, it's all about the community. Like and just because I don't like it doesn't mean that it's not bad, that it's not good or bad in this case. I have mentioned it. I'm like, well, I'm not into club music, not necessarily something I would put on my playlist, but nonetheless, it still sounds pretty great. And I give it like somewhere around like a 7 or an 8. And then that's usually how you know I'm like, okay, it's great.
And you have a musical background, which I'm sure plays a lot into the reviews that you do.
I'm not the best musician, I'll tell you that much, but I definitely have fiddled around with several instruments since like the age of 13.
Okay, very good. Wow, I'm very impressed. So let's talk a little bit about Israeli music. First of all, you've been doing this for a few years. What took you so long to get to Israel?
Honestly, I truly don't know. It was recently. I was recently just talking with someone that I had ran into in the streets, and they had informed me that they were from Israel, and I just started talking to them, and he was telling me about how amazing his life was growing up in Israel and having a lot of friends and coworkers and families, like, not family, my mistake, friends and coworkers that have been to either Israel or are Israeli. It just kind of flipped the switch for me to go for it.
And what have you seen any real differences between Israeli music and that of other cultures? Does Israel have its own unique flavor that you've noticed?
It does have its own flavor, that's for sure. What I would emphasize the most would probably be on like the vocal style. Like it has more of a raspiness to it. But once again, I think it actually just might be the language itself. and it just really stands out. And also, like, there's a certain type of instrument that I haven't been able to really pinpoint. I think it sounds really similar to a sitar, if I'm not mistaken the actual name of the instrument. But I've been noticing like some interesting trends in the Israeli music.
Yeah, well, I think they borrow a lot from their neighbors and the Arabic culture, and that could have something to do with, some of the instruments that make their way into Israel. I don't know enough about Israeli instruments and the way they make their music. I just know what I hear. So I couldn't quite put my finger on it either. Now you told me that you've become a fan of Idan Reichel. Why him? Why did he stick out among the other Israeli artists that you've encountered?
So far, I have only had the chance to listen to that one and only song that I covered in part 4. And what really struck me was the vocal style. Like, it was an integration of like just very ambient sounding like vocals, and then like just the way they presented everything. It was almost like a ballad, and it just caught my attention instantly.
Yeah, the one Brian is referring to is Mima Makim, which is Idan's probably most famous song ever. So good choice to start with. Very good.
Thank you.
And yeah, he has a lot of great stuff, and he's toured extensively over in America and throughout the world, and really one of Israel's most successful singer-songwriters out there, and I'm sure we'll see a lot more from him. Do you mind if we do a few live reviews on the air? Can I expose you to a little bit of brand new Israeli music, and you tell me what you think?
That sounds great to me. Let's give it a shot.
All right. I think that'll be fun. Let me share my screen here on Zoom. 1 second here. And we're going to start with one of the most popular songs right now. It's by Omer Adam and Eden Ben Zaken, both two huge stars who collaborated on a very odd song called Kukuriku. And by the way, Kukuriku, just to give you a little bit of background, is the Israelis' version of cock-a-doodle-doo. All right, it's what they would use instead of cock-a-doodle-doo. They call it Kukuriku, and the music video is as strange as can be. Let's take a look. All right, I don't quite understand what's going on there and why they've chosen to do what they are doing, but it's a huge song now in Israel, mixing in all kinds of languages, Spanish and English and Hebrew, and I think there's some Arabic mixed in. And tell me, go ahead, give me your thoughts.
I actually think I heard some Portuguese there as well. I love when people like integrate like different languages into their music. And as you can see, like once the chorus actually hit, to me that type of sound actually sounds very Israeli. And you actually brought something to my attention that I hadn't really thought about previously. Like, yeah, it might be Arabic inspired. So yeah, like that. Once that chorus hit, I'm like, yeah, I feel like the influence of like the Middle Eastern countries there. But yeah, I definitely love the fact that they're collaborating. Like, they really do a great job bouncing off of each other. Kind of reminds me of like a collaboration between Camila Cabello and Shawn Mendes, if I had to like pinpoint it. So I think that sounds pretty great. What's your thoughts?
So give me a rating.
Oh, if I had to give that a rating, off of what I heard so far, I'm going to go right ahead and give it a 9 out of 10.
9 out of 10 for Kukuriku. Very good. All right. Well, Israeli society definitely agrees with you, because that is one of the most popular songs this week in Israel, and it's been doing very, very well. As strange as it is, it's getting lots of attention, and sometimes that's all it takes to get lots of attention, but these are two of the biggest stars. So 9 out of 10 from Brian. Great job. All right, here's the next one. It's another very big one this week, and it's a song that we've enjoyed a lot, because many of us who live outside of Israel but visit Israel as often as we can, we've spent some time in Ben Gurion Airport in Tel Aviv. Well, because Ben Gurion Airport in Tel Aviv, because of coronavirus, Ben Gurion Airport has been a lot more deserted than usual. So this artist, his name is Ivri Leader. He went into Ben Gurion Airport, cleared out the whole place, which wasn't so difficult these days, and shot a music video in an empty Ben Gurion Airport. So this is called HaMizrach, HaTichon, the Middle East. Check it out.
מה קורה? למה את בוחרת בסירנה? questa è una cosa, so? Anzi, yeah.
All right, you get the idea of that one. So give me your reaction. What I want to tell you, what I love about what you do is I can very easily I know what I like, and I get very excited about what I like, but I can't always tell you why I like it. So what I love about you is that you can put into words why you like or dislike something. So I think that's great. Go on.
Well, I actually, it took me a while to actually get to that point as well, to try to describe it. If you see some of the earlier stuff, trust me, I struggled as well. What I like about this one, well, first of all, I love the music video. Like the lady just walked in there and like just owned it. She serviced herself, and like I love that. I love pointing out some of the interesting factors in these music videos because they get really interesting.
For sure.
But when it comes to the actual song itself, like it really does build up quite magnificently. Like it builds up as a chord, like it builds up really, really well. And it took a completely different twist, which I was not expecting. I was expecting like a really heavy bass focused like chorus, but instead what they decided to do was just kind of like pluck strings and kind of just make it like just like really stretch it out. And I think it's that acoustic element, or of course it is an acoustic, but they're just like plucking away at notes. I love that. Like they really, really took me in for a loop there.
Very cool. See, these are things that I cannot put my finger on, and I appreciate that you can. I think that's great. So, give us a rating for this one, HaMizrach HaTichon by Ivri Leader.
For this one, so the guy actually took me by surprise. I'm gonna go right ahead and also give this young man a solid 9 out of 10.
9 out of 10. Very good. All right. The official review, the official rating by Brian Velez. Thank you. And I'm going to give you one more. And this one is one I don't want to give too much away because I don't want to sway your vote. But and every one of my listeners knows that I've had a crush on this woman for the past 15, 20 years, even though, and my wife knows very well how much I have a crush on this woman. Her name is Shiri Maimon. This is not a brand new song. It came out a little over a year ago, but I thought this was a good representation of who she is and what she can do. Check this out. All right, I think you get the idea. It pretty much continues on from there, the way the first verse started. And this woman, you've reviewed her before when you did the Israeli Eurovision songs. She represented Israel in the Eurovision in 2004 with a very famous song called Hasheket Shenishar. Still going strong all these years later. Tell me, what do you think of Shiri Maimon?
She's doing really, really phenomenal. She still has a wonderful voice. She was the very first one on the Eurovision series. She was the first musician I covered. And I still think she's absolutely killing it. I love how they really just kind of slow down the song, build it up. They're just really, really stretching it out. And I love the way her voice is really emphasized in this song. I love the music video. Very interesting. A very creative choice that they decided to go with. And the sound is just, mind you, great production value. Everything all around. I really can't say much negative things about her besides an 8 out of 10. I apologize about that.
8 out of 10 for Shiri Maimon Neshima. Very good. Congratulations. Yeah, I've been in love with this woman for a while. She got her start on the Israeli version of American Idol, I don't know, at least 15 years ago, maybe more. And she's been going strong ever since. And I think she has some of the best, one of the best voices in Israel today. And I'm a big fan. She also starred on Broadway for a short time here in New York. So we're very impressed with Shiri and her success. Well, Brian, I can't thank you enough for coming on and helping us understand your take on some current or a little less current Israeli songs. And I'm so glad for your success. I think you've uncovered a real cool niche out there in YouTube land. And I hope you stick with Israel even more, and because we love to hear other people's perspectives. And thank you so much for joining us here at Israel Hour Radio.
Thank you, Josh. I really appreciate you for having me on.